It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, which is presented by our sponsor, Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store location at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I am joined today by Osceola Recruiting Analyst Charles Fishbein, who also is the president of Elite Scouting Services. And we're also joined by former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola Football Analyst Mark Salva. Before we get started today, I want to remind our Osceola subscribers that you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases. You may also sign up for a membership card to present for in-store purchases. All right, Fish and Sully, welcome back. We had last week off, and of course that gave us a lot of things, time for a lot of things to happen. First of all, did you guys have a great Mother's Day weekend with your families?
Yeah, I got to see my son play baseball, and he hit a home run, his first one this weekend, so I was ecstatic. Mm. He didn't hit it over the fence, but he did hit it to the fence, so I ran the bases.
It's much harder to have an inside the park home run than it is an outside the park home run, so that is pretty cool. Apparently he has his mother's speed.
Yeah, he definitely didn't. Yeah, if he has any of my traits, he'll be talking to your son about Florida State football in about 10 years on the internet or whatever else they have as social media.
What about you, Sully? How was Mother's Day in Nashville?
It was uneventful. When your son is a golf pro and he works all day, you got to kind of wait till he gets done.
That's true.
And celebrate Mother's Day. So, yeah, it was good. It was good.
Well, it was an eventful Mother's Day weekend for the Florida State football program, which got their first offensive line commitment for the class of 2022. And I hope I'm pronouncing the young man's name right. Alu Ba, 6'6", 325 pounds from IMG Academy. Committed to Mike Norvell on Friday night. He is ranked as the 49th best offensive tackle prospect in the nation for class of 2022, but he played almost extensively at guard in his junior year at IMG. Obviously a teammate of Florida State 2022 quarterback commitment, A.J. Duffy. So we wondered if there would be a trickle-down effect from the commitment of Duffy a week and a half ago, and certainly it impacted right there at his school with Ba. But Fish, you're closer than any of us locationally to Alu. Kind of tell us what you think of him as a college football prospect and what you've seen from his high school film.
Well, the one thing is, and I was talking to Sonny about this before, is from my understanding, talking to people that are close to the kid or have seen him, is that over the last 3 or 4 months, he's reshaped his body. How he played last year, he played a little overweight. I think he was in the 350 range. He's lost about 35 to 40 pounds. And there's footage out there of him from this spring where he shows more agility, some athletic ability, that he looks like he could function at least a right tackle spot. If you look at his film from last year, he's like the Sapp kid and the Charlton kid that they're already recruiting that is probably more suited to playing inside at guard. Now, one of the things is we can talk about this forever, and Mark can talk about this. A lot of these kids, it comes down to they get over-evaluated a lot of times by college coaches because you could find a flaw in any kid. I think a lot of times Florida State's passed on kids like this in the past, and then they ended up taking somebody lesser quality down the road. He's a big kid. When he gets on guys, he can move them. You'd like to see him finish his blocks a little more. You'd like to see a little more lateral quickness, but he's a big body kid. And from my understanding, he's a hardworking kid. He's very coachable. All the intangibles you need to be a quality offensive lineman and potential all ACC type kid. This kid has those qualities. He knew, from my understanding, that last year wasn't a great year for him. So what he's gone out and he's been going and doing conditioning drills all off season, and he's put in the time and the effort to get better. And he did that on his own. And I think that's very important for someone like him, that he's done that.
Yeah, and I've seen some of the videos he has posted working out since last year. And you're right, he does look like he's in better shape. So I agree with you there. Mark, what were your thoughts on watching Mr. Ba as you watched him on tape?
Yeah, it's funny, Fish. I have it right down here in my notes after watching his junior tape. I said, huge upside. Looks like a guard or a right tackle. So I think we're tracking on this guy from what we've seen on junior film. When all the things that you just mentioned about his work ethic is really exciting for me. I put here, he doesn't look like anybody on our roster right now. I mean, he's a huge kid, and I put, you had to pack a lantern and a lunch just to get around him. Yeah. I'll tell you some things that I really liked with him. Number one was, defenders don't separate from him readily. In other words, he maintains really good foot pressure. So he's always pressing. When defenders separate from an offensive lineman, it's usually due that they're not pressing, right? There's not pressure against the guy. They kind of let up a little bit. And you don't see defenders separate off of him very often. So that tells me he's always pressing with his feet and his hands. And that's a really good thing. The other thing I saw that I really liked is that I see his body get torqued in kind of weird positions, but he really can gather himself and right himself and respond. He's got really good balance, good recovery, and he can bend, because when he gets in those kind of positions, you see him bend in kind of awkward ways, but then his feet catch up with him. So he's a really athletic looking kid. It's good to see that he's lost a little weight. He's reshaping his body. That gives him an opportunity maybe to play outside a little more, because he is very long from what I can tell. But I think, bottom line, this is the kind of kid to Fish's point, we need to recruit. You can pick flaws in every kid, but I tend to look at what can he do, what does he do naturally, and what can we build on. And I think this kid has a really big upside. So I'm pretty excited about this one.
Yeah, I was glad to see. Go ahead, Fish.
No, I was just going to follow up with what Mark said. I just think that offensive linemen, so many times coaches look for their flaws and not their strengths. And you can over-evaluate these guys up front and make so many mistakes. And I think that's why they're in the position they are, because there's only in the state of Florida, there may be one guy this year or two guys that are in that level that you're like, all right, this guy's going to at least be an all-conference kid. Julian Armella is one of them. There's not many of those guys that exist. I mean, the Pritchett kid up in Georgia, but there's not a lot of these guys that are just walk in, can play right away, and they're going to be guaranteed starters. They just don't exist. And then what happens is a coaching staff, you go and you over-evaluate them, and you're like, well, we could find better. Well, we could find better. No, you can't. Like, try to, upgrade the talent on that roster. That's the main thing, is they need to improve that offensive line room, and this kid does that.
Yeah. It's funny. I always try to look for comps on guys like this, or high school guys. And he reminded me a little bit of DJ Fluker. When I look at this kid, that's a big time compliment right there. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I felt like I was looking at. DJ was a big, massive guy, had good feet, good balance, but, he's a little slow footed, but, he made up for it with his length and his aggressiveness, I see a lot of similarities there, and just a little bit of film that I've watched. So yeah, I'm excited to see his senior tape and see how he does.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing his senior tape. Based on, first of all, it's a great start for a class. Pardon the pun, but for a recruiting class, it really does need to be heavy on offensive line. And this is the first of what I'm hoping will be 4 or 5 commitments to the offensive line. But based off his high school film, I had projected him as a guard based off last year's film. Obviously Fish thinks he's got the ability to play right tackle, and he's seen him a lot more than I have. But certainly a guy that, as you said, Mark, he gets in a stance and he shows you he can bend very well. And then, of course, he was powerful as a run blocker, like most kids his age, a little bit more advanced in the run blocking game than he is in pass pass protection, but certainly a guy that I think has, like as you said, in my evaluation, I put he's a kid that his best football is definitely ahead of him, and you're not going to get a kid that is maxed out coming out of high school. And, of course, as Fish said, the kid has spent a lot of time getting his body in shape, which obviously will help him on lateral movement, foot quickness, all of those things. So I do think I think it was a big get. They need numbers in this class for offensive line, and he is a good start for Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins to start bringing some new blood into this program. Fish, that gives them one for 2022. In your opinion, how many more offensive linemen they need to take in this class?
As many as they can take. I just don't think they need to limit it to 4. Like if they could get 6 quality ones, bring them in. Like the only way they're going to improve that room, one, is bringing in more talent, and that creates competition. Guys know, hey, listen, they're bringing in guys to take our jobs, and those guys are either going to get better or they're going to get going. Like the problem is I'm sure the coaches want somewhere upwards of 17 guys on their roster along the offensive line. I don't think they have I think they'll play with like 13 or 14 this year. And the only way you're going to make that better is just keep bringing guys in until you get the 7 or 8 that you can continue to rely on week in and week out. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's huge on numbers, and that gives you, the more you sign, the bigger pool you have of finding a player. All right, Fish, FSU got more good news today. In addition to Aluba committing on Friday, they also learned that Notre Dame offensive center Dylan Gibbons, who had entered the transfer portal last week, has committed to Florida State today. He brings 28 games worth of experience, including 1 start versus Syracuse this past season. He is originally from Clearwater Central Catholic, where he was rated the 38th best offensive tackle in the class of 2017. He is 6'4", 295 pounds. And Fish, how does this help Florida State going into 2021?
Well, this gives them options on the offensive line now. They're not, if someone's not playing well or someone gets injured, they have more than, one guy to just come in and step in and play multiple positions. I mean, Gibbons can play tackle, guard, or center. They're pretty much set at the, guard spots now with Gibbons. I think Gibbons will play guard with Lucas and Maurice Smith in the middle. That allows them to keep Devontae Love-Taylor and Darius Washington on the outside. But you have other guys that have experience too. I mean, Robert Scott, Bavion Johnson, Brady Scott. You have more than – one guy that could come and fill in if a guy goes down. So I definitely think this is a big piece of the puzzle.
How do you feel like, and I agree with you, I think this is a huge addition to this team. He has, played a lot of snaps for Notre Dame over the last 3 seasons. Did not start, but, Jermaine Johnson did not start at Georgia. Notre Dame was very talented on the offensive line, as we all know, those of us who follow college football closely. But I agree with you. One of the things I liked in watching his Syracuse game was that he runs well. He's a good athlete. He's a big athlete. How do you think he compares athletically? We talk about guard or tackle, and I agree with you. At the very least, he's going to come in and compete to play guard right away. But looking at Devontae Love-Taylor and Ryan Roberts the year before, how does he stack up athletically to those guys if they were going to look at him at right tackle?
Yeah, I think, the Roberts kid was kind of a project compared to these guys. I think Gibbons could come in and contribute at a high level. I think he'll grade out well each week. He's very well coached, like I talked about yesterday in the last segment, whatever. Gibbons is very well coached. He went to Notre Dame. They do a very good job of developing those guys, and he can just plug and play. He's going to be able to play multiple positions. Like I said, if Maurice Smith goes down, Gibbons was projected to be a center at Notre Dame this year, I believe, so he could fill in there instead of playing a Bryson Estes, who's a freshman. They don't have to play freshmen this year, and I think that's going to be a big improvement on the offensive line, not having to rely on such young guys. They have a lot of experience now. They have at least 7 or 8 guys that have either played or started a football game in the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and of course, now you bring him in, you add him to Rod Orr, the true freshman who will report this summer. But certainly this was a position that needed some needed somebody who could come in and play right away and compete right away. And Dylan Gibbons certainly does that. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining. And I think this is a very big get. It does add valuable experience to this offensive line, a guy that can play right away, and obviously a guy that adds, at the very least, will add depth to this offensive line. But I agree with you, Fish. It should be a guy that comes in right away and competes. And it was a great get for Coach Mike Norvell and Coach Alex Atkins. And can't wait to see what he brings to the offense when we get to watch him in August.
No doubt. And one last thing is, it allows also someone like Thomas Schrader, who got injured this spring. Maybe he doesn't have to rush back now. You could let him heal, get bigger, stronger, more physical, get another year under his belt before he really has to start and be part of the rotation. I think it's a plus all the way around.
I agree with you, Fish, and I think it didn't take long. This kid was on the transfer market for about 5 or 6 days, and I'm sure that this decision was made before it was announced on Monday. But good get for Norvell and staff, and it really helps strengthen an offensive line that is very thin and not very deep talent from a talent pool standpoint too. So good get for the Noles, and we'll see how this affects the team when they get to training camp in August. Florida State did send out a press release this morning. At the time of this recording, it's Monday, May 10th, that Kansas transfer Andrew Parkman is officially part of the FSU football program. Fish, another Florida kid, another transfer. He was Big 12 Newcomer of the Year in 2019. Production dropped off drastically last season, but he is in town. He is a part of Florida State football program. And what are your expectations of Parchment, and what are your thoughts on Parchment?
Well, I think you and Jerry, you guys saw enough of spring football as well as Bob that if there's one position on the roster they can improve outside of O-line is a wide receiver position. Just a guy that, they have a lot of young, talented guys, but you don't want to have to rely on that. You want a guy that's been through the rigors of college football, understand what they need to do week to week. He brings a veteran presence to that side of the ball, somebody that's – and it's not like, hey, Kansas doesn't play in a bad conference. They're playing against very good football teams. So playing at a high level, he comes in. He's been productive at Kansas. Hopefully we see the sophomore version of him, not the one that came out last year and then ended up, I think he took opted out, but he has a lot of potential. He brings some size to a position that needs size. And if he can help move the chains on third down and, maybe be like a Rodney Smith inside the red zone where he catches touchdowns, he could do nothing but help this team.
Yeah, I think he gives you a vertical threat. Like you said, he's got great size. And, whether the drop-off in production at Kansas last year was because of, they weren't a very good football team. Could they get him the ball? Could they protect the passer? There are a lot of variables that we're not aware of because obviously we did not spend a lot of time watching Kansas football. But certainly a guy that they got in early in the transfer process and has been committed to Florida State since December or January. All right, moving on to another part of recruiting. 2 weeks ago, or just about 2 weeks ago, Florida State got the commitment of quarterback A.J. Duffy, a 4-star kid that you and I are both high on, Fish. They already had a commitment from Nicco Marchio from Phoenix, Arizona. Nicco went radio silent on social media after A.J. committed. He has since scheduled 2 official visits, one to West Virginia on June 4th, one to Michigan State on June, I can't remember, I think 18th. But when Alu Ba committed, we heard from Nicco again. We did not hear from him after AJ's commitment. What is your level of concern that Nicco may decommit at some point, and what do you think these official visits mean? Now, to be totally forthright, I don't know whether Nicco had these officials planned prior to his commitment, but he has been very vocal in being a Florida State commitment. How do you read? I want to ask both of you, how do you read into these official visits being announced on social media? And was that a response? And listen, a 17-year-old kid, they're going to have emotional reactions from time to time. What do you make of the official visits?
I don't really have a problem with it. You know what? Let the kid go take some visits. He has a lot of ties to Coach Dillingham and Coach Norvell. he knew all along that they were going to take two quarterbacks. He's been a plus. A lot of people bring up the whole social media thing. Sometimes you got to just let these kids, think about what just happened. Right. It's like every time something happens, they call these kids and they forget they're 18-year-old or 17, 18-year-old young men. I mean, how do you think you're going to react if somebody else, another quarterback came in the room? What are you going to sit there and go, oh, yeah, it's great, man. I can't believe they just brought in a 5-star quarterback. I just let the kid, he understands what Florida State's trying to do. I say he sticks it out. I just think they've put a lot of time and resources into him. He's recruited for Florida State. How many times did he come to Florida State on his own dime? He's shown a commitment to the school. I just think, step back, let him take a breather and see what happens. I mean, he knows that they need two quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we do make too much out of social media. And plus, listen, if I was a highly recruited kid, I'd want to take all 5 of my official visits. But I do know as long as you're taking official visits, there's always that chance. I think Mark, you'll probably back me up on this, but when I was at South Carolina and at USF, we always thought if we could get a kid on campus, at least we had a shot. We knew we didn't have a shot if we couldn't. So what is your take on Nicco's taking these official visits, and how do you feel about what's transpired since then?
Well, ever since Nicco committed, he was pretty much the alpha dog, right? I mean, he was the guy kind of leading the charge. He and Travis, you saw the back and forth between them on social media and recruiting aggressively for FSU. And, then we get commitment from Duffy and is he the alpha dog anymore? And so, to Fish's point, he's a 17-year-old kid. He's got to process this. Now, I am probably pretty certain that Norvell and Dillingham have been upfront with him throughout the whole process about their intent to sign another quarterback. And so, if it's a case where did he get his feelings hurt? If that's the response, then I don't know that we have the right kid anyways, right? So, hopefully it's a situation where even AJ and Nicco are communicating, right? And maybe they become friends and compete against each other, kind of like a Casey Brad situation. You would hope that you could get a situation like that. Going on visits, it always makes you nervous, because anything can happen, you'd rather he not, but you also, if you're going to remain, if you want it to be a solid commitment, you want to be sold on the program, then you got to let them do it. It's kind of that deal where, you got to let them go before they come back, kind of thing. And if he does come back, then he'll be that much more solid and committed to the deal. If he doesn't, and he always has these doubts in his mind, then, if things don't go his way, he may fly the coop the first sign of some adversity. So you got to let him do it. You hope that you've built a strong enough relationship and, you've made your case strong enough that, this is nothing other than, a free meal and a couple nights out, and hope it stays that. But you never know. Like you said, you always have a chance.
Listen, they got Mackenzie Milton, and then we don't really know what Jordan's going to do after this year. He may, decide, hey, listen, I want to take a flyer in the NFL as an athlete or whatever. And that room is going to be wide open in 2022. So, if Nicco has any confidence in his ability, he should realize, this is the best shot I have at starting early. I mean, all it takes is one high ankle sprain from Duffy, and they're in the same. You've seen it with Dan Kendra and Chris Wanke got his shot. Chubba got hurt, right? Yeah, Chubba got hurt. I mean, so many things. You can't. Every place you go, they're going to recruit other quarterbacks. So this idea that you're going to be the only one, if that's your mentality, go to New Mexico State, because I'm sure they need a quarterback and he could start right away. If that's your mentality, if you're wherever you go, there's going to be competition. But as far as an open quarterback competition, there's not a better place for this kid than Florida State right now.
Yeah, and I think some of it was just what both of you guys have talked about. You know, you're young, you do pay attention to those type of things. I think we could probably all go back to our high school days, and if you played on a high school football team where you thought somebody was of equal ability with you, and they were getting letters from somebody that you weren't, back when you used to get football letters in the mail, you know, you did pay attention to that kind of stuff, and sometimes it was disconcerting to see that your buddy got a letter from a school that you were interested in, but they're not talking to you. And I mean, I know it's not exactly apples to apples, but I do kind of understand that mentality going back to my high school days. And obviously it was neither me or the guy I was talking about were recruited by anybody like Florida State. But anyway, I kind of understand it, but I was glad to see that he did reemerge on social media to support not only his commitment, but also to support his fellow teammates. And I think there's a teachable moment there for everyone involved in this that, hey, you know, I think I wish more position groups had the offensive line mentality. You know, you're going to compete against 15 guys. There's only 5 spots, but you know, you've always got your teammates back, even though you're recruiting for the same, competing no for the same position.
Those guys can't have an ego, man, because they're, I mean, look at Mark. He'll tell you that, listen, they're the most important part of the team and get the least recognition all the time, and they just go out and do their thing. So, you know,
the only quarterback that ever had an offensive line mentality was Danny McManus. That's the only one I've ever known. Yeah. That guy was one of us. You know,
well, there's no doubt about that.
We need more Danny McManuses in the world.
He probably would have been an offensive lineman if he could have gotten big enough.
True.
All right, guys, we're going to take a 30-second break to hear from our sponsor, Alumni Hall. We'll be right back to talk a little bit of NFL draft, a little bit proposed rule changes to 2-a-days or preseason practice, because they don't have 2-a-days anymore. But if you're old school, we still call it 2-a-days. But we'll be right back, and we'll get Fish's and Sully's thoughts on the proposed NCAA rule changes, as well as how FSU fared in the draft, and we might even talk about one of the more famous ex-Gators and his desire to return to the NFL after a 6 or 7 year hiatus. We'll be right back.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
All right, we are back, and would like to thank Alumni Hall for being a sponsor of the Seminole Sidelines podcast. All right, guys, a lot of different directions we can go on this thing, but one of the things I want to get, you know, we're a week and a half removed from the NFL draft. We saw 4 NFL players get drafted. Asante Samuel was the first to go. And then we saw Marvin Wilson and Tamari Terry slide to being undrafted free agents that have signed with Marvin signed with Cleveland, who's one of the first free agents to sign a contract anywhere. And then, of course, Tamari Terry signed with Seattle shortly after he went undrafted. Is there any out of any of the 4 guys? We know that the Jets drafted Hamza. They're going to move him to linebacker, and I believe what they play is a 3-4 scheme. Any thoughts, anything stand out from the NFL draft as it pertains to Florida State?
I mean, other than Marvin and Terry both going undrafted, which, you know, who would have thought that a year ago? Before the whole reason they came back, most people thought that they were going to be at least 3rd round picks, the 2 of them, and to go undrafted. But I really like Hamza. I think him coming back last year when he didn't need to, he was injured. It shows a lot of his character and what type of kid he is. But with the modern day football that you have, and you need these guys that are kind of versatile enough to play a linebacker, and he's shown he could play in space. But you put him, he can cover a tight end. He can cover guys in the flats. He's versatile enough to move around the field, and I expect him not only to make that team but contribute, you know, next year for the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets got a great value because if Hamza doesn't get hurt, you've got at least a second-round draft pick. He might have played his way into the first round last year, right? So I think they got great value. And at Fish's point, with the spread offenses, materializing themselves in the NFL like they are, you got a guy who can play in space, play coverage, and play the run physically. You got a guy that can make plays on their defense. So Jets got a great value. Obviously a little bit surprised about Wilson not getting drafted at all. We can go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Now I was a little bit whatever about Robinson getting drafted ahead of Kendo, but when you really sit down and think about it, they're really different kinds of players, right? So Robinson's has more of a burst, is more of a runner and a hitter, and Kendo's more of a set the edge kind of guy. So the probably needs there were a little bit different, and it's just a matter of who came up to draft at what time is why Janarius probably went ahead of him, and I think Janarius played his way into a higher draft spot with his Senior Bowl performance. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He kind of showed off his athletic ability a little bit. Of course, we always knew he had great athletic ability, but his playmaking ability was night and day from that, right? So, hopefully, wish him all the best, and that, they can coach him up and get him playing and realizing his potential. So, that's pretty much the take. I mean, Marvin, I'm sure he's disappointed, but with the contract that Cleveland gave him, I think kind of speaks to maybe they feel they may have gotten a little something there. They're giving him a chance to play himself into it. I don't know what his evaluations were like with the NFL with his health and all the other stuff, but he's got an opportunity. He's got the ability if he turns it all around and produces in camp. And I think Cleveland kind of showed that with kind of the contract that they gave him, gave him a chance.
Yeah, and probably the thing that surprised me most in the draft was Kendo going before Hamza. I mean, just if you told me, hey, how are you going to predict these guys going in order, I would have thought Hamza would have gone before Kendo. I agree with both of you. I think he's got a tremendous upside. I think he's got a chance to play for a really, really long time in the NFL, and I think he is a bargain, like you said, Mark. If he had been healthy through 2020, I think going back to your point about being a third or second round pick for sure. I think, I remember talking to my brother who's been a long time college football coach, coaching defensive line. And, we talk a little bit about the fact that Florida State was supposed to be really good on the defensive front the last 2 years. And there was a lack of production across the board. And, he kept on telling me about Janarius Robinson and Kendo specifically. I wish I had a chance to coach those guys because they have everything you're looking for physically. And so I think when you go to the Senior Bowl and you have the kind of Senior Bowl that Robinson does, it sparks that interest for the NFL scouts and the coaches, and there's not a coach that doesn't think he is a difference maker in the production of a kid, right? Everybody can coach a kid better than the coach they got, right? I mean, all coaches think they can turn these great athletes into great football players. So I think they got enamored with both Joshua and Janarius' size, athleticism. But I was a little bit surprised that Kendo went in the fourth round, and a little bit surprised that Hamza went as late as he did. Fish, in our podcast 2 weeks ago, we had predicted, we'd even talked about the fact that we thought Marvin might go as late as 7th and Tamarian might go undrafted. And I think we were more on target there. I was a little bit more surprised. I was more surprised that people are surprised that Marvin and Tamarian did not go in the draft based off the production and not playing a full season. Did I think Marvin would go? I thought he'd go by the 7th for sure. But anyway.
Well, look, here's the thing. These NFL guys, they dig relentlessly into these kids. I mean, I remember when I was a GA, I'd get on the phone. I remember getting on the phone with the Jet scout on a guy. And I was on the phone with him for 2 hours, and he would ask me things like, did he ever miss bed check? Who were his friends? Did you ever see him out? Those kinds. I mean, just really, really digging into these guys. And so, you can't help but think there's a lot of stuff that they take into account in how when you bring somebody into the culture of your team, you got to be really sure. And NFL scouts, they don't spare any expense in digging into these kids. And I think that just kind of speaks volumes to, what their opinion is overall. Because really, you got out of 32 teams, it only takes one team. And that all of them took a flyer on those two guys, I think speaks a lot.
I think, let me jump in real quick. The one thing, Mark, and you can go over this. I think I think both Marvin and Terry were a little outspoken. I think unlike the NFL, the NBA does not mind that the players say what's on their mind and everything. But when you get to the NFL, the teams and ownership, the players are not the lead dog. It's the organizations are. And I think that kind of hurt both of them. Marvin came out at 2:00 in the morning and spoke his opinion. And, hey, listen, we all make mistakes. And then on top of it, he didn't have a good year. And then you look at Janarius and Kendo, they both played through all of last year as much as they could, especially Janarius. I think Janarius has had a lot of issues. He lost his home with a hurricane. He had to deal with COVID. I think he had one family member that may have even passed away. So he hasn't had, and he's also had 3 defensive end coaches in 4 years at Florida State. So the talent's there. He just never put it all together. I mean, one last thing I'll say is I'll never forget when he was at the Jimbo Fisher camp. He was working out with running backs. I mean, this was a 6'5", 6'6", 235, 240-pound kid doing running back drills, and you see him cutting and moving, and he has all the physical talent to have been a first-round pick. You just never saw the production at Florida State. And I think these NFL guys, you know how it is. Once you get past the 3rd round, it's all based on potential, at that point.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Janarius. That's the first time I ever saw Janarius 7-on-7. He was playing wide receiver. I think it was a sophomore or junior, but just freakish athlete. And if you watch that highlight package that ESPN did after he was picked up, you watch that kid run down the open field. I mean, you don't see many people that big running that fast. And sure enough, it's certainly worth seeing if you can get him to be highly productive. And, listen, sometimes playing for money changes the kid's perspective and focus, and he might be one of those kids. But like you said, he had a lot going on off the field. And going back to what you said, Mark, about getting into Marvin and Tamari and, whatever the reasons were, I remember when I was at USF, if we had an NFL scout, he was going to talk to the head coach, the position coach, the strength coach, the recruiting coach, the athletic trainer, at least one of us in football ops, the academic football people. And, they get into the high school coach and they do background checks. And, I don't know, it could have just been simple as lack of production, but certainly there's a lot of work that goes into this from the NFL side of things. And
well, you know the old saying, right? It's whatever you are, money makes you more of that.
That's right. You're right. You're right.
And that's the thing that NFL guys live on, and that's why they dig into these guys so much, Yeah,
but I certainly think in Terry and Wilson's case, the lack of production topped off by the opting out, either by choice or because of injury, whatever the case was. I think that did hurt them in the long run, but certainly wish all 6 of these guys the best of luck and in their NFL careers. And 2020 was certainly a difficult year for everyone, and hopefully they will move on into their pro careers and be highly successful, and we'll be talking about them for a long time. Want to move on to a couple of other things. One of the things that has been a lot of talk about on media, television, print media, websites. The NCAA, for about the 5th out of the last 6 years, is proposing changes that would limit contact work in preseason camp, what you and I used to call two-a-days, Mark, which has now been outlawed. Teams are right now allowed 25 practices over 29 days before that first week of the season starts. Currently, you have to have a mandatory 2 workouts and helmets only, 2 workouts and shells only. For people that don't know what shells or uppers are, that's helmets, shoulder pads, and thigh boards or thigh pads. And then they have 21 of those 25 practices that are discretionary. They can be full padded practices. They can be anything you want. and there is no limit on how many minutes of contact work you can get. The proposal right now is by the NCAA, that's still got to be approved, is you would have 9 practices of the 25 that are helmet only, 8 in shells only, no tackling. And when I say no tackling, that means going to the ground, and then 8 full padded practices. And there is a proposal that in those full padded practices, you can only have 90 minutes of tackle football, and they've talked about making it as little as 45 minutes of tackle football. Mark, you and I and Fish come from a different generation where we used to beat on each other every day for 3 hours a day, and I'm not saying that's right, but what do you think of these proposed changes?
Well, how many practices do they have to put flags on?
They're getting there.
I mean, look.
They're getting there.
You know, the only way you get better at playing football is to play football. The only way you get better at blocking is to block full speed and tackle full speed. These aren't NFL players. NFL practices that way for a reason, because those guys are grown men. They've developed their skills through 4 years of college and however long they've been in the league. They've got, numerous opportunities to just perfect their craft throughout the whole year, because that's all they do. They're professionals. In college, it's a totally different ballgame. You're getting kids from high school who come from all kinds of different abilities and levels of coaching, and you've got to teach them the base skills to perform at a high level. And to me, you can't develop these skills without doing a lot, some full contact stuff, and then of course developing the intangibles of toughness and pushing through adversity and these hard practices. That's a big part of building a culture of not quitting and toughness and those things, those intangible things that make good football teams. And this just puts a wet blanket over all of that. What's going to happen in the long run is you're going to see a drop in the product of college football.
I agree totally.
There's no doubt in my mind that and it's turning into a 7-on-7. So now you got these spread offenses where, you can't touch the quarterback, you can't touch the receivers, hard hits or targeting and all that stuff. I mean, it's just really, you're going to, people want to see touchdowns. I get that. But I think those of us that really love the game and dig into the game, we like to see, we love a 7-6, Alabama LSU game, occasionally, right? And especially those of us that like to watch the middle of the field, watch the line of scrimmage. So,
well, there are some college football coaches that agree with several of your points. Jamie Chadwell, the head coach at Coastal Carolina, had this to say to Sports Illustrated: "We're not the NFL. You hear a lot of coaches complaining about sloppy play. We need that time to develop. You need to teach those guys from a physical standpoint. When you're not a power program or a developmental program like ours, you really need that time." Mike Loxley, head coach at Maryland, talking about board drills, and this is where I have an issue with it. Board drills are fundamental for offensive linemen. I don't know a way around it, because they are thinking about getting rid of board drills. Oklahoma and bulletin ring. I've never seen a college do bulletin ring. But somehow, and then, of course, one more from the quality of football, which I think it will severely affect the quality of football. Neil Brown, head coach at West Virginia: "Will it affect the opening few games? Yes, I do think it will negatively affect play," says Brown. "Tackling will be awful. Blocking," I mean, this is now me talking. "Tackling will suffer, so will blocking. Will the common fan notice? I have a tendency to believe not," is what Neil Brown said. So there is some conjecture to it for sure. Now, this is an interesting stat, guys. They have changed rules, the NCAA, in 4 of the last 5 years pertaining to preseason practice. The research shows that they've done it. This was from Todd Berry, I believe, the president of the AFCA, American Football Coaches Association. 72% of concussions happen in practice. 50% happen in preseason camp. But here's the odd thing about it. They have changed this rule 4 out of the last 5 years to try to make practices safer. They have seen no dramatic drop in the injury numbers despite what they do. But I agree with you. I think you got to get calloused up. Listen, if we've seen Florida State practice with these beanies on their head all spring. So what happens when you get to a game and take a helmet-on-helmet contact? You're going to be a little bit buzzed or dinged, and you're not going to be used to it. There is something to be said for physicality and getting calloused up. Is the way they practiced in 1960 the way they practiced in 1980? No. Is it the way they practiced in 2000 and 1980? No. But I do think that you do football is a physical game, and you got to have. I don't think just taking all the contact out of it is going to make it necessarily safer. What do you think, Fish?
Pat, last year BYU played Navy in the opening game last year.
Great point.
And the coach for Navy said they did not get in pads once all year. And the one advantage Navy has, if they have one when they go into games, is they're going to be more physical than somebody because of how hard they have to emphasize that part of their program because they're not as physically talented as a lot of these teams. And BYU ran through them. I've never seen Navy get throttled like that. And the coach came out and said, we didn't have one tackling practice all fall. So that should tell you all you need to know about not having physical practices. There's no way around it. I could understand if they want to go this route, maybe in spring football to limit some of the physicality, but in fall practice, while a team's trying to get ready, there's no way around it. You got to let guys hit. They've done. I've seen it at every level. They've literally taken out all the things that really. The crackback blocks, everything. Guys, I think the game's never been safer. To be honest with you, you just don't. At least at the high school level, I don't see those major injuries that you used to have. Usually, it's just a non-contact injury where somebody gets it now, but I just think the more you try to fix it, it's just going to be worse. So you may as well just keep it the way it is.
Yeah, and listen,
you can't play scared.
No,
and that's what this amounts to. Is I understand you're trying to reduce the risk of injury, but you can't play scared. Injuries happen when coaches get fatigued and guys are kind of being lazy and standing around. That's when a lot of this stuff happens. When they're not paying attention, that's when a lot of these injuries happen. So it's incumbent on the coaches to make sure that the drills are controlled and that the pace of the drill and the tempo of the drill is controlled in such a way that you can do that in full pads. And so it's incumbent upon the coaches to kind of control that. But legislating it through non-pad practice is totally the wrong way to go.
Mark, though, most injuries, a lot of them are not. De'Aaron King last year was running and blew his knee out. I don't think anybody touched him. There's only so much you can do. A lot of times injuries come. They're Achilles injuries or non-contact, usually to ACLs. A lot of times a guy just puts his leg down wrong and from a cut. There's just only so much you could do. Concussions are going to be part of the game forever. It doesn't. You're talking about guys running into each other. Somebody's going to get their bell rung every once in a while. I don't know what else they could do to make the game safer.
Yeah, I'm with you. Listen, I'm not saying there doesn't need to be some modifications, but if they go with this 9, 8, 9. You better get everything you can out of those 8 full padded practices because that's where you're playing football. Another one of the proposed changes is rule. Listen, these rules are making it where anybody can play football. I don't know anybody that's not tough enough to go through 8 full padded practices. Now, I know a lot of guys that aren't tough enough to go through 16, but, anybody can play football going through 8 full padded practices. You just got to be tough for about an hour and a half. All right. One of the proposed rules changes is they would cut back on preseason scrimmages from 3.5 to 2. To me, this really is going to affect young football teams where you got to teach kids to play. Now, you can put everybody in 3rd and 10 situations and situational parts of practice. And, you don't have to worry about the defense doesn't have to worry about the offensive line or the offense running the ball. It's 3rd and 10, it's 3rd and long. It's going to be 90% pass. All right, to take away these scrimmage opportunities, if you're a young football team, you're full like Florida State is, you're full of redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores. One of the easiest ways to me to teach a kid to play ball is to roll the ball out there and have a live scrimmage where if it's 1st and 10, it's 1st and 10. If they gain 4 yards, it's 2nd and 4. And kids have to think on their own situational aspects of practice. The thinking's already done for the player. But if you get out there in a live scrimmage situation where you don't know what the down and distance is going to be from one play to the next, kids have to think. They have to learn to play the game. They have to get smarter on their own with the coaches off the field. And I think taking away those scrimmage opportunities, again, will affect the quality of play and will affect the development of young football teams. Mark, what do you think about my take on that?
No, I agree with you. As a player, those are the days you really look forward to. You play football to play football. You don't play football to do drills. Right. That's the hardest part about football is that you only get 12 opportunities a year to do it. And, the other opportunities during spring and fall camp when you can, buckle your chin strap and go full speed, you really look forward to those times. Who wants to go out and hit the sled and do 7-on-7? That's not football. That's flag football, And I'm telling you, the product is going to suffer. And you're going to see a lot of bad football games. And, the only way this is going to change is when people stop watching because the football is going to get so bad.
Well, hey, listen, I'm afraid we're headed towards 7. I told my brother jokingly about 5 or 6 years ago that we're headed towards 7-on-7 football. It's what we're going to be watching in 30 years. And listen, there is an inherent risk to playing football. The qualifications for a headache now, that means you have a concussion. I can't tell you how many headaches I had in high school and in college. But I knew it was a dangerous sport. But yes, and listen, as a football player, and I don't know how you were, Mark, but the practices I dreaded the worst were shorts because you're going through the motions in shorts. To your point, it's not really practicing football. It's a lot of technique work. There's shorter practices. There's only so much you can do in shorts. Not that you don't need a short practice every now and then. I'm not saying that. But anyway, I can tell you what's going to happen too is that you're going to have these short practices, and they're still going to be doing one-on-one pass pro. They're still going to be doing some kind of half-speed 7-on-7 stuff. Guys are still going to get hurt. So guys are still going to run into each other. Collarbones.
You're going to have some really weird injuries, is what you're going to have because coaches are going to push the envelope because you got to get these guys ready to play. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You got to get them ready to play, and so they're going to push the envelope as much as they can. You're still going to you're not going to eliminate it. You never are.
Well, then, you limit the number of reps. You're only going to be able to get – if you got 90 minutes of full padded practice, you got to get your first 2 teams ready, right? So how do you develop a third-teamer or a guy that maybe is a very good walk-on? How does he get a chance to prove it? I think you're missing some opportunities by limiting that. But it's the way the game is going, and certainly there will be more conversation on this, but I think we're all kind of in agreement on it. It's we're over legislating.
I can't imagine there's a football coach out there that's for this. I just have a hard time imagining that's the case.
Yeah, I know there was a coach in that Sports Illustrated, Clay Helton, said that they are close to the 898 model at USC now.
Yeah, wonder why they lose.
Which may explain a couple of things. I don't know.
That's not a ringing endorsement for it.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Hot Seat himself.
And as you would expect, former Georgia Tech head coach Paul Johnson used one term to describe the pros rules changes, and that was ridiculous. And so
from the guy that takes out knees in practice. All right.
Yeah. That's right. Knees are a part of the body. You're going to get hurt at some point. But anyway, this is going to be fascinating to watch it go forward for sure. Guys, I did read something this morning. I want to ask you your question on it. Question about it. It's Florida State related in that it involves Deion Sanders. Apparently, Jackson State had sent out some invites to an invite-only football camp, which you can try to have, but in today's society, even before Twitter became a huge thing, at South Florida, we would have these invite-only camps, and we knew word was going to get out, and you really can't turn anybody away. You got to bring them in. You're going to make the prospect mad. He may be best friends with the guy you're recruiting. You might hurt you with that coach. But Deion took to Twitter to chastise this kid after he let it be known, a kid that let it be known he had been invited to Jackson State's invite-only camp. I don't think it does you any good as a football coach to do that to a kid. Hopefully they weren't recruiting him very hard because I'm sure it hurt him with him. But anyway, the kid deleted his post. But Mark, just your thoughts on, why would you go after a high school kid for tweeting?
That's a no-win situation, right? I remember Coach Bowden, when asked why he was always so accommodating to the media, why he was that way. He's like, well, because they always have the last word. You're never going to win that fight. Right. And you can now, I think, apply that to social media. You're never going to win that fight. So, chastising a kid over social media, it can only end badly in terms of perception, in terms of, burning bridges with that program or that kid or that community, whatever it may be. There's no upside to it. You just got to kind of let it go. And it's a tricky situation to take to social media and try to defend yourself like that. Sometimes you just gotta let it go and you just keep your head down and keep working.
Well, Deion's hit a lot of the right notes as his transition into being a college football coach, but I do think that he missed the boat here, and sometimes it's listen, he's a first-year head coach. He's going to make mistakes too. Just because he's Deion Sanders doesn't mean he's not going to make mistakes. Young coaches make mistakes all the time, and he is in the grand scheme of things, a young football coach. But Fish, what's your take on that?
Yeah, listen, other schools have had these, invite onlys, but the NCAA really frowns upon it because the camps are supposed to invite everybody, but I mean, Friday night lights, Saturday night lights, that's what those were invite only camps where they wanted to get the best players. So it's not surprising that something like this happens or happened at a school when it's surprising it hasn't happened before, to be honest with you. Like I said, FSU and Florida have been having these things, and Georgia has their like a Friday night lights, and they want the best players there on those nights. That's why it's almost like an invite only camp, So.
But even those schools are going to get kids that weren't invited because their teammates are going to tell them about it. So anyway, I just thought it was kind of you can have a private conversation with the kid. I don't think you need to call him out on Twitter, but it's what happened, and it was interesting. I just want to get y'all's take on it. Speaking of youth football. Fish, you went to Mike Norvell's youth football camp with your son on Friday night in Fort Lauderdale, or Saturday. I can't remember what day it was.
I went back-to-back nights. The first night got canceled because of lightning, but he did go to the Friday night in Fort Lauderdale. So
kind of tell us what your take on it was, what the experience was like. And
I mean, it's neat because, they get to basically the way the camp works. They have all the position groups from quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, all the way through all the positions on defense. So each group has about 10 minutes with each position coach, and they go around and they learn that position. So they're not just learning one position, the one they want to. They learn the whole game. So, I mean, they did a good job. They had over 250 kids at the two camps I went to. And there's a lot of kids, I could tell you right now, that they're going to be recruiting in 3 or 4 years from now. So recruiting's become like, how do you get on guys the earliest? And now they're basically branding. Yeah, they're branding Florida State. A lot of these kids did not get to watch Florida State in 2013. Some of these younger kids, or they were too young to watch them. So this gets them on them earlier and more exposure. It can't be a bad thing. I think they did a great job with the camp. It was very organized, and I think Norvell probably tell you they feel it was a successful event, both of the events down here.
Yeah, and listen, I think you and I talked about it the last time. I think what they're doing is great. I think it's going to grow the Florida State brand, even for kids that were not Florida State fans before, or Florida State fans now. Their parents are Florida State fans now. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, you only get to sign 25 kids, but you do bring on. And I think it's a very unselfish thing for Mike Norvell and his staff to be doing in May because they can't be recruiting. They could be at the office watching high school tape all the time, but they're not doing that. They're going out and doing something that will benefit them directly in some way, but not more so than it benefits the school. So I do think it's interesting. Now, Mark, I got one. I don't mean we're not going to end this. I got a couple of NFL items. I guess we're all just in general football fans. There's been a lot of hubbub. In fact, Paul Feinbaum said on the show that the story of draft day was Tim Tebow news that he was trying out for the Jacksonville Jaguars as a tight end.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That he was trying out for the Jaguars as a tight end after being out of football for since 2015. What are your thoughts on Tim Tebow trying to establish himself as an NFL player at the age of 32 or 33 years old at a different position?
Do I even have to dignify this with a comment?
Well, I liked your comment when we were off there.
The circus has come to town.
It's an insult to NFL tight ends everywhere. Look, he was a quarterback and one of the best of all time in college.
No doubt.
I don't have any animosity towards him at all, but to be one of the elite tight ends in the world and get on an NFL roster, never having played the position, simply on the name, it's a publicity stunt. Is what it is. He's never blocked anybody in his life, and to think he's going to block somebody or
it's going to be an NFL defensive end. It's not going to be a college defensive end.
That's what I'm saying. I want to see the first time, even if he's like an H-back, he's going to have some pass blocking responsibility at some point. He's going to have to head up a blitzing linebacker or a defensive end at some point. Have you ever? In my experience, whenever you see a quarterback, all you have to do is watch a reverse and watch a quarterback try to block somebody on a reverse, right? And it's comical. It's absolutely comical. And it's just a different thing. And you're talking 32 teams have 3 tight ends on a roster. And so you got 100 tight ends that are the best in the world. And to think that he's one of the best, he deserves a spot on the roster, that's crazy.
Hey, Mark, listen. They're going to be on Hard Knocks next year, and he'll be the first guy they bring into that room to cut and bring his folder. So at least you'll get to enjoy that. All right.
No, Irvin's not going to cut him.
Let me be clear. Irvin's going to cut him in the first set.
He's not going to cut him on camera. You're crazy.
Oh, man.
Let me be clear. I have no animosity towards the guy. Okay, I really don't. Even though he's a Gator and all that, and he's the king Gator of all Gators. I get that, but you can't deny what he accomplished. And his character and all that other stuff. I know him, but the fact that that he's one of the 100 best players at his position in the world, that's ludicrous.
Yeah, and listen, I agree. I think he's one of the best college quarterbacks that ever played the game. I saw him play in person. Saw him play in Doak Campbell Stadium where he dominated a football game. You don't see many guys do that. And he was running, but I do think this is a little bit over the top. Listening, go ahead, finish.
I remember seeing him at Nice High School take a team that had no business winning state, and he carried that team all the way. I mean, the guy's one of the greatest college football players, and it's honestly, I think it tarnishes him more and more. Like, just go away, leave. Like, it's just enough's enough. Like, he's not going to make the team, and it's just going to be more of a sideshow. And they're trying to build that team from the bottom up. It's I just don't think they need that distraction. So
I keep on waiting for them to take the Pouncey boys to come out of retirement, and for Percy Harvin to come out of retirement. They're just going to bring back the old 206 Gators back.
I know the Pounceys, man. Those guys, I don't think they're ever. They are so beat up. And the physical, I remember being at one of their houses, and the poor guy could barely walk in Miami. I mean, they're done. I don't think Tebow can convince them to come back.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was just joking. I had a worse joke than that stuff right there. But hey, there's some other talk in pro football. Better chance of starting at quarterback for their roster of their own right now. Aaron Rodgers with the Packers or Russell Wilson with the Seahawks?
Oh, Russell Wilson. The Seahawks aren't getting rid of Russell Wilson.
What about you, Mark?
I agree with that.
All right, then one other thing that it's not a Florida State related thing, but it's football related. How strange was it to see a college head coach named in May? Lance Leopold, the former head coach at Buffalo, took the Kansas job last week. How weird was it to see a staff change in May?
You know what? I think they got it right, Kansas, in the way I think the longer they waited, it gave them a chance to look at all the coaches they could pull from. It's almost like when the season ends, these schools fire somebody and they just make panic hires a lot of times. Kansas took their time. I think they hit a home run. I don't know if the guy's going to win, but I've watched Buffalo games. They're very physical. They're very well coached. He's done a phenomenal job, and people don't understand that, don't know his history. He won national championships, and I know it was at D3, but this guy's a winner. And he's
won everywhere he's been. You're right.
He may not be flashy, but those teams will punch you in the mouth. You go watch a Buffalo game last year. They had 2 running backs that could run all over you. Honestly, if you like run game, I'm sure if Mark likes that power football, man, I'm sure he enjoyed if he watched one of those games because they just punch you in the mouth. I think the running back ran for about 600 yards on one team last year. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Kansas is a train wreck right now. What do they have to lose by waiting? They're building from the bottom up. So take your time, get the right guy, and know that you're building, and it's going to take some time. Commit to him some resources, and what do they have to lose? I mean, they're already, like I said, they're already a train wreck.
Yeah, well, obviously they didn't have a choice but to hire a coach because of the Les Miles situation. But
right.
It was just so weird to pull up the internet and see that I had, the college is making the train, and we knew it was coming for a month and a half. But it was just so weird to see.
I think it worked out in their favor, like to get rid of Les and then get a guy. Honestly, this guy's a very good coach. I think they got lucky with this one.
Yeah, and you know what? And he, like you said, he's won everywhere he was going. Has gone Wisconsin, Whitewater, and Buffalo. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes him to build. But guys, I know we've gotten away from Florida State, so we'll end it here. But want to thank both of you guys for joining me today. We'll get back together next week, and of course, want to thank Alumni Hall for sponsoring Seminole Sidelines. And of course, if you're not an Osceola subscriber, we'd love for you to consider becoming an Osceola subscriber. You can go to theosceola.com, go to our subscription page, and then our FSU20 in the discount code field, or FSU20, and that'll get you 20% off our $74.95 annual subscription rate. And of course, if you are an Osceola subscriber already, you can go to the site and go to the Alumni Hall ad and click on the Alumni Hall ad to sign up for your 20% discount code for online purchases from Alumni Hall, and then get your membership card for in-person purchases at 1817 Thomasville Road. But guys, have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. And subscribers, thanks you for listening. And of course, if you just listened to our podcast and are not a subscriber, we hope you enjoyed it and hope you'll join us next time.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!